Hello, everybody. Ha. New microphone. It's got a mute button. Ha. Hello, everybody. How you doing? So that was an interesting beginning. Welcome to Whining On. My name is Matt Bowden, the Incorrigible Rogue, and today we're here with Philip Battle. Just a quick thing to say to everyone before we begin. We're running a Patreon at the moment, so if you are interested, please check on our Patreon site. If you're not yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or become a member on Whining On with Public Performers. Now, today with us, we have Philip Battle. Phil, I did a lot of research when we did the interview, and you've had quite a life. You know, you've been a poet in the very influential early times in Liverpool. You're an academic. You're a writer. You've been a street artist. You now run a very, very big street art organization that's booked around the country. What was it like when you began? Was this from a child? Did you have the dreams of living this kind of life, or?
Did I have a dream of living this? I think I was probably born to be on the street. Where do you want me to start, Matt?
Well, I suppose let's start it this way. What was the when you were known as Master Battle? What was the household like?
Okay. My father was an alcoholic who went into a mental asylum when I was very young. My mother was a serial abandoner of children and left us at a bus stop in Salford, Manchester. Myself and two brothers. That's how the story goes anyway. I was so young, I don't remember it. But apparently I was born to be on the street. So we were on the street at this bus stop. We got found and taken into social services. And two of my brothers got adopted. And I went into the family home with my grandmother, who was happened to be called Eleanor Rigby.
Wow, so you had a story which was deserving of a Dickensian drama.
Yes. Yeah, I grew up in abject poverty with Eleanor, who didn't get any child support or anything. And this is obviously in the 1960s. In abject poverty, I had an alcoholic father who used to come home from the mental hospital on occasions and do weird, strange things. And I had a wicked uncle who used to beat the shit out of me whenever he felt like, and stuff like that.
So how did you live a life as a young man like that?
It was with great difficulty. It was a very hard life to lead. But, I mean, when I was that young, I didn't know any different. I thought everyone lived like that, because that's how you do. You do think this is what it is. You've got nothing else to compare it with, you see.
And were you schooled? Did you go to school?
Went to school, but I became very introverted because I was different in some way from other children. Growing up in that household makes you different, and you become, in some ways, an outsider. And it's something I've felt all my life, really, that feeling of being outside the norms, which isn't a bad thing, by the way.
No.
We all have these strange things happen to us in life, and they make us what we are. It's like the old saying, we are what we overcome. We overcome these difficulties and we become something else. And we have a story to tell, and at the time, very hard.
Did you find little joys? I mean, being in such an abusive household and being isolated in school, what were the little, because I'm sure as a child you find little things to enjoy and to appreciate. There's things about the world that interest you.
Yeah, I became very introverted, and I used to go off on my own because I was brought up, although I had two brothers, I was brought up as an only
child. Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time on my own, and I would go up and dig up tarmac and look for ants nests and stuff like that, and I'd capture bumblebees in jars, just to capture them and look at them and then set them free. And it was just, I gained an interest in nature, and I became very sensitive to stuff like that, and that was my world. I suppose that was the burgeoning of creativity. Oh, I didn't know it at the time, but that sort of like was sparking a creative mind,
Yeah, sort of an intrigue in the world around you, a will to understand and discover.
And it was because I was going inside myself, and I was going on that journey, and trying to cope with everything that surrounded me, and and there was always that difference, and that difference was, at the time, I suppose, it was very painful. It's painful to live like that because you want to be like everyone else, don't you?
Yeah.
Or do you?
I can also see it's painful to remember. It's obviously
Hmm.
something which has left its mark,
Well, it has, I mean, it's like that old saying, give me a child till he is 8, and I'll give you the man. Well, that does form your life, and that's what makes us different.
And so when you became a teenager and you started, being able to see the world more and access the world, did you start getting into art at that age and into poetry and into all these different facets that your life has had since?
Yeah, I was kind of. I'd left school. I left school with no qualifications. In fact, I got an F in O-level art. Yeah, I got an F in O-level art, and that set me up for the rest of my career.
Well, you've been a lecturer in university for illustration, so you've booked the expectation.
It was amazing that 7 years after I left school, I was teaching illustration at Liverpool University. How did that happen? I don't know. I suppose I was driven. What I think it was, I was driven to get away from my surroundings. I wanted to put all that in the past. I wanted to get away as far as it's like a long distance runner. You're trying to run away from your past. So I grew up in a household that had no books. And so I decided to read books because it was a sense of rebellion. I was rebelling against the past,
And what age did you leave school?
It's about 15, I think.
And
16,
what year would that be, if you don't mind me asking?
97.
97.
No, sorry, 97. 1975.
1975.
So 1975, I left school. And then in the same year, I got a YTS scheme. They used to call them YTS schemes, youth training schemes.
What's YTS stand for? Youth training scheme?
Youth training scheme in the 1970s. And I got a job with loads of labourers knocking down walls in a place called Cantrell Farm. I was knocking these walls down with all these big hard men, and I wasn't. I was this little sensitive, introverted child.
And so, what did you think when you found yourself at 15? With all these big burly geezers knocking walls down.
I felt like a fish out of water, to be honest. It wasn't my kind of thing, and it's really difficult. But I think somebody saw something in me, saw a sense of sensitivity about me, I suppose, and they transferred me onto a place called Skeever College of Further Education. And this is when I didn't have an education, by the way. I didn't have an interest in art. I didn't know anything about art.
But this was from the youth training scheme.
Yeah.
So they saw you knocking walls down and went,
yeah. So
you can tell by the way that kid knocks a wall down, he should be an artist. He's an artist, that lad.
I couldn't knock a fucking wall down. What do I want to knock? Anyway, so I can't remember who it was, but somebody saw this opportunity for us in Skeever Teacher Training College in my hometown of Prescott, which is just outside Liverpool. And so I went there, and it was in the art department, and it was basically as an art technician in a teacher training college. And I didn't know anything about art, and I thought, what am I doing here? What did they want me to do?
And so you got given this job. This is your job. You're not training to be a technician. You are a technician.
I became a technician. It just became a technician to do. Well, basically, it was preparing lessons for lecturers in college.
But you wonder how the hell are you expected to prepare these lessons when you've got no experience?
Well, it was quite good, really, because the lecturers were really quite sensitive and arty types, and I suppose they saw a sensitivity in me. I mean, they must have done, to give me the responsibility to do this, and so I just went in there and learned as much as I could about art materials and about how to set up lessons and how to prepare things. And
how does one learn these things?
Basically, I got told this is what you need to do. so, so I was just learning on the hoof, you just learn on the hoof, and I'd only just left school, be about 12 months since I left school, so it was about
So you just hit 16.
16, 17 or whatever,
Yeah.
and so there's a bit of leeway to allow us to do that, and in my spare time, while I was in the between lessons, I suppose, I started drawing, and I quite enjoyed it, and I was getting good feedback from some of the students and lecturers and stuff, and they said, well, why don't you go to night school and do A-level art? And so I thought, well, why not? So I thought I'll go to night school and do it once a week, A-level art. And I went to the same school that John Lennon went to, the Institute of Art in Liverpool. So I did it there, and I learned to do. That was the start of my artistic career, I suppose.
Are you still living at home at this point, or have you managed to
Yeah,
get? Yeah,
I'm still living at home, and but I was being chucked out of the house a lot, and I had this uncle who would pick on me and stuff, and tell me to get a proper job. You want to get a proper job, you'll never make a life out of being an artist. You want to go and work in a factory. Well, all them factories are closed now, so
Yeah.
I've got the last laugh on him.
Yes.
So, but yeah. So.
And how long did you spend? Did you do 2 years in that school?
I spent, I think, about 18 months at CF Mart. Whilst I was there, I came in contact with loads of arty type people. There was Julian Cope from the Teardrop Explodes. He was going to the school at the time. He'd not even formed the Teardrop Explodes. I think he came into the art class and said, "Do you want to join my band?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I'll play a bit of guitar." And he said, "Okay, we've got rehearsals." I thought, I can't do it, because I'd only just started playing the guitar. So, but that was a claim to fame that I had been asked to join a band by Julian Cope. So I keep saying that in every story I ever recite,
And what was the environment there then? So you're working during the day as a technician.
Yeah.
Helping prepare lessons. You're going to night school at night, and then
Yeah.
you going to bars after this night school and drinking with the other people who were learning?
No, in fact, I wasn't drinking at all at that time. I didn't start drinking until much later on. I was in my 20s before I even started socialising and doing that kind of stuff.
Which is surprising by the sounds of the upbringing you had, that you would be someone that would find it difficult to socialise.
Yeah, it was difficult for me to do. So I was going home, and I was practicing art. I went home and I would do paintings, and so it became a full-time thing for me to do. I was learning the craft, really. I was learning how to paint, and so I'd paint through the night at times, and that was my drug, I suppose. That was my alcohol. I was just painting.
An obsession, would that be correct in thinking you became obsessed with the craft?
Yeah. I was obsessed with learning something because I found something I was good at. I found a direction in my life that I wanted to pursue, and I thought, I want to be a painter. I want to be as good as Picasso. I idealistic ambitions to become something.
Was there a sense of self-validation from that?
Having
discovered and chanced upon that?
Of course, and also it was in rebellion to the base kind of existence that had been brought up to. I wanted to aspire to something more. I wanted to become something that they wouldn't even recognize in me as a person. And so that was part of my running from that place. I wanted to get to a good place. I wanted to become something better. So I became totally obsessed with the production of art and the craft of art and how it was done and stuff like that, and everything. I mean, the more I learned, the less I knew. I was just learning stuff all the time and just realizing I don't know anything. I would just want to learn more and more and more. And then I got interested in writing at the same time. And when I finished CF Mott, I happened to get a job at Knowsley Council for the Council Leisure Services Department, and I became a graphic designer suddenly. Didn't have a qualification to my name, and suddenly I'm a graphic designer.
And so you walked away from being a technician now. You're not double bubbling dolls. You now become a full-time graphic designer.
Yeah, I became a full-time graphic designer. I started designing posters and billboards and.
How does one do graphic? Because I imagine a graphic designer, you walk in there with your iMac, but we're talking about 1977 now. Where are we at?
We're talking early 77. Punk movement had just started, I think.
Yeah,
I was getting into punk rock as well. That was good, and that was brilliant.
So we can talk about punk rock a tiny more, but I'm really interested in what the position, what the job of a graphic designer was at that time. Do you make collages? Do you paint? Do you draw?
Yeah, it was graphic design was all cut and paste back then, so it was all designed for print. So it was all cut. You'd cut out your designs. You'd use Letraset. You know the old Letraset? Have you ever heard of that? No. Well, it's on a big piece of plastic, and sheets of letters that you'd actually rub down with a burnisher. It's called a burnisher, but you'd rub them down and you'd create text on pieces of paper. It's all manual,
like a screen print kind of thing.
Well, kind of. How do I describe a cut and paste? Well, anyone who knows anything about the history of art we're talking about here. Cut and paste is an old graphic design technique that we used, which is cutting out things and pasting them down on pieces of paper to create. Like you said, a collage, like a layout, and that was your layout.
And what was the office like, and what were the people you worked with there like?
The office was there was three of us in the office, and two old fogies and me, a young whippersnapper who was just given all these jobs to do. And the old fogies were basically the ones who were running the show, and they were putting on these productions, and they would turn around to me and say, right, we need a poster for a show, the Senior Citizens Talent Contest coming up in Southport. Okay, right, I'll have to come up with a graphic then. I'll have to come up with some kind of design. So I'd design a person on the stage and some kind of old-time musical kind of lettering and stuff like that, and you put it on a poster, and I'd run down to the printers, get 1,000 copies printed off, and we'd put them around all the civic suites and stuff around the borough of Knowsley.
Were they quite bohemian? Were they like the people in the art school, bohemian people being graphic designers, or were they more technicians?
No, they were very sort of like officey types. They weren't bohemian at all. There's nothing bohemian about that job, but it was a job. Yeah, it was a job, and it was a chance to learn my craft again, in graphic design. So I ended up doing that for a few years.
And you said you got into punk at that time. So this comes to a time of describing the society around you at this time.
Yeah, I started getting into music really big time, and when punk rock came along, well, that was it, and I suppose it started off with an interest in Mark Bolan and stuff, because he was an original punk, I think.
I always thought of Mark Bolan as a glam rocker.
Well, he was a glam rocker. Yes, he was. But I think he influenced punk in many ways, especially towards the end. And unfortunately, he died.
Well, with the stronger makeup, with the black eyes and the big white face and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but he was kind of like he was a big influence. But punk. When punk came along, that was a revolution. That was just like we started making our own costumes and stuff. And I got interested in the music scene in Liverpool. I'd be down at Button Street and Matthew Street, where everything was happening basically. And
what was happening?
Well, I mean, there was the Probe Records was in Button Street. That was a big record store there, and that's where you'd get all your imported records and records you couldn't get anywhere else. You would get at Probe, and Pete Burns worked there. Pete Burns Dead or Alive and stuff like that. And through that actual contacts with going there into it got me into, I suppose, a more bohemian type of lifestyle, because I started meeting people in bands and people in performance and stuff like that. And
you started writing poetry yourself, right?
Yeah, I was writing poetry in my bedroom and stuff like that, because poetry became a way of expressing things I couldn't express in any other way. You can put it in poems, and poetry and art go together, as far as I'm concerned. They're the same thing, poetry and art. And I started meeting these people in the arts who I could relate to, and had similar views to me, basically. So I started going to a few parties and stuff, and I remember it was at one party that I met these three guys who, and we decided to create a fanzine, a Liverpool fanzine called Breakout, and so I started writing and designing the covers and artwork for Breakout, and that went on.
Why did you decide to do that?
Why? Because it was just something I was really interested in. I thought at the time, I think everybody, when you're young, you're a bit idealistic. You think you can change the world by doing things, and you want to do this stuff because you're really passionate about it. You think things are going to change. We can do this. We can change the world. So we were all sort of like that. We were all feeling we can make the world a better place.
And how did you think you could change the world with a fanzine? Did you think by people knowing about this stuff, by being part of a movement and proliferating information, that you'd change the world?
Well, we wanted to be the centre of the Liverpool music and art scene in Liverpool. That's what we wanted to be. So we, as a gang of four, if you like, thought we'll do that. We'll set up this fanzine, and we will actually be a catalyst for change for musicians and the art scene in Liverpool. And indeed we were.
And how did it start then? Did it start from everyone in their own bedrooms doing stuff?
Well,
it's like, all right, Mom, I'm making me fanzine kind of thing,
Well, it was kind of like it was one of us, a guy called Neil Tilley, had already done 2 issues of Breakout fanzine, and we came along, and it was poor. It was poor, to say the least. He came along with these 2 fanzines and showed us, and we looked at each other and thought, we can do better than this. We can take this into orbit. Because I had graphic design skills and writing skills, and so another guy was a musician, Paul Robb. He had a band. He had his own band, Stun the Guards, and we had Alex Brassel, who was a student at Liverpool University, and he was into photography. He took some great photos. In fact, he's got a career now as a photographer. He's an art photographer. He lives in Hastings now, but he's made a full-time career as a photographer. So we had all different skills to bring into the mix. And we had Neil, who was more of a business type person. So there was 4 of us there, and we thought, right, we'll really make this happen, And so we turned Breakout into basically a fanzine that was made in someone's bedroom into something that was printed every single month with 32 pages, and became the centre of the Liverpool music scene. Everybody who's anybody would want to be in the fanzine for a start, and then we started organising gigs. And we started
just before we get onto the gigs, how did you distribute this then? You can make this fanzine,
yes, and
you can take it to a printers, but then you've just got a pile of papers. How does it become something that gets spread between everybody?
Yeah, we had thousands of magazines, and we'd take them, we'd actually cut them into quarters and say, right, you've got like so many, you've got so many, and okay, we'll cover. And we made lists of all the places that we were going to cover, and we literally went around the city and persuaded people to put them into their shops, into their newsagent shops, into every record shop in the city, to every place where young people gathered anywhere where people would buy a copy of Breakout, you know, and obviously the shopkeeper's got a percentage of the.
And how much did a copy of Breakout cost then?
I think it only cost about 35 pence.
Yeah. Was that a standard price for a magazine at that time?
It was about that. It was about 35 pence. It wasn't much in 1980, 80, yeah, something like that. It wasn't much, and it was kind of like. But it was enough to. I mean, the shopkeeper would make 5 pence on each copy. We'd make 30 pence, and also we could attract advertising. So we used to get advertising. We had people going around looking for adverts. You know, so we'd put adverts for gigs. All the music venues would advertise in it. The Beatles convention, which was just starting off, they'd put full page adverts in Breakout and stuff like that. So we'd subsidise it that way, you know.
And how long would you all spend? How long would you personally spend on an issue in a month?
Well, it became almost a full-time job, but it wasn't. I mean, I was working as well at the time and trying to fit it in the evenings and stuff like that. But we'd spend a lot of time on it, and we weren't getting any money for it. I mean, we were covering the costs.
Covering costs, yeah.
Covering the cost of the fanzine.
So you look like 10 hours a week, upwards of 10 hours a week.
At least, yeah. I mean, because you'd have to go around and you were setting up. You're always setting up for the next issue, so you would kind of like you'd be producing that issue, and then you'd be also producing the next issue as well. So you'd be setting up an interview. So you'd go around with your little tape recorder and you know your little tape, the old tapes, you know, and you know,
tapes, kids, are something that people used to record sound on.
Yeah, yes. And so we'd go around to a pub or somewhere and get a band. We'd interview them, set up some questions and stuff like that, you know.
But so also as well, my partner's a graphic designer, and so she loves finding old magazines of this era because she says you don't believe how much time it takes to make the graphic design of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
To lay the things out, it's all done. She said it's all done by hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's done by hand, and we even stapled them all together. You know, we stapled them all. We would be, you know, thousands of bloody things, and we'd staple them by hand. We've got a long arm stapler and just did it all by hand. People didn't realise, but I mean, it was I mean, we learnt a lot from it, you know, and well, that went on till I left it in 85 actually, so I was doing it for about 6 years or something. But towards the end, 84 I think it was, we got a phone call from Paul McCartney's press secretary in London saying she wanted to appear. Paul wanted to appear in Breakout. Would you like to go to London and interview Paul? You know. Which was a great thing. I mean, that was an exclusive interview, and he gave us an exclusive interview, Paul McCartney, and it was like a kind of like vindication of what we've been doing, and sort of like it was great at that time. You know, we were young lads, and you know, one of the greatest stars decided he wanted an interview just with us.
And I interrupted you before, but you said you started doing gigs with that, and I assume this is before you left in 84.
Yeah. Well, we started gigging, doing the Breakout gigs, they were called, because we called them the Breakout gigs because everyone around Liverpool knew what Breakout was. So we called them the Breakout gigs, and we'd gather a load of bands together and we'd put them on in like a showcase. We'd give them a showcase at some of the venues in Liverpool. And so we'd have one band on after the other, and we'd also have performing poets on and stuff like that. And we'd go to places like the Iron Door, which was the Pyramid Club at that time. And the Iron Door, by the way, was one of the places that where the Beatles established themselves. It was a very famous club in Liverpool. And we'd be we'd have these evenings, and we'd invite everyone in the music scene, and people like John Peel came to them, and you know, talent spotters from the music industry would come to see these bands in Liverpool, and we were just creating a buzz. You know, we were getting people from London, scouts up from London to you know, talent spot some of these bands, you know, and some of them went on to big names, you know. I mean, everybody would come to these things, you know. We got the, you know, members from Echo and the Bunnymen and Dead or Alive and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and all of these names actually grew out of this breakout thing. It wasn't just breakout; it was we had other fanzines going around at the time as well. But it was that it's creating that sense of energy in Liverpool, which sparked off the early '80s music boom in Liverpool, and we were at the centre of it because we were just it. You know, we just we had our fingers on the pulse. We knew exactly what was happening, and we knew how to attract people.
How did it personally feel for you from the beginning of it being, you know, Out of the Bedroom magazine to being, you know, a dominant force in the music culture of Liverpool? What was the personal experience for you of that happening?
It was totally mind blowing. It's just a brilliant, brilliant thing, and it just sort of like, oh, it just.
Were you still introverted?
I was introverted, but I was starting to gain in confidence as well because I started performing my own poetry at these gigs that we were doing, and stuff. So I became a performance poet, and I started honing the skills at performance because there was something about performance that you could hide behind. You know, I liked the idea of becoming a performer. You know, but I was still introverted, and I was fighting. There was a struggle within me.
Did you feel a freedom of putting a mask on, so to speak?
Yeah, it was like putting a mask on and becoming something else. And I'd be physically sick before every performance. I'd be physically sick because I was so introverted. I was so shy, unbelievably shy, and I was physically sick. But I'd do it, you know, and there was a sense of euphoria after it. You know, this sense of euphoria that I've achieved
Performance
something.
high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was just a great thing. And everyone said, "Oh, you got great stage presence and stuff like that." You know, the poetry was shit, by the way, but you had great. But oh yeah, okay, yeah, brilliant.
But I'm sure if you're an editor of this incredibly successful fanzine, there must have been people trying to be friendly with you, trying to become part of your social group. It must have been quite difficult to be an introvert during these times.
Yeah, it was, but you can't change what you are. You know, you're trying to. Yeah, it was kind of like I was always torn between the being an extrovert when you're performing, and then going back and painting and being introverted and living with your own demons and trying to, you know,
Were you performing socially in the bars? Did the performance end at the stage, or was it part of the socializing in the public sphere?
It ended on the stage, and then I'd go off and I'd become awkward and you know, inappropriate, I suppose. Inappropriate. I'd just become. I wouldn't perform so well on a one-to-one basis. So you know, it's one-to-one. I found it difficult to do, but I found it easier to go back and paint and you know, be alone again, I suppose.
Yeah. And did you, just before we go on to that, did you develop a character when you were doing poetry on the stage? You said we talked about putting a mask on in some way. Was there?
I used to start with a mask, actually. I used to put a mask on. I used to literally put a mask on. I had a mask that I put on, and I'd rip it off during the performance, you know, and take off my jacket, do all that, you know. And then I'd scream at the audience and I'd make them terrified. I don't know why I did that. Well, I do, actually. I was full of anger and hatred and all that kind of stuff.
And was there a conscious, you know...
It gave me a kind of like, you know, it was an expression, it was a voice. I was venting my anger and disdain at society and stuff like that. But that gave me a sense of, I suppose that's where the performance came in, because there was an energy in that people are magnetically drawn to. I suppose they're drawn to people who are energized in that way. You know, you could see it in performers. You know, I see it a lot in street performers, actually, where they perform with an energy and underlying drive, and you can see it in them. You can see it in them. So yeah, I was like that, and yeah, it was.
And did you plan it before you did it? Did you think, okay, I'm an angry person, I want to express my discomfort with the world around me, so I'm going to do this and this and this? Were you very cognizant of the performance before it happened, or was it evolving as it was on stage?
Yeah, it was totally evolving. I didn't plan anything. I had a set list. I drew up a set list. Okay, this is what we're doing tonight, and then I started writing songs with the band. I had a band behind me as well. I had a band behind me who didn't have a clue what I was going to do next, because I was just so spontaneous, and I was just I was off the wall at times. It's crazy. We set up a thing called the Left Bank Bistro, which was a bistro that you went to, and this is in the early 80s, obviously, a bistro where you didn't go for food. We went for alternative evenings of entertainment, and we put on mime artists, and we had performance poets like me, and we had people like Craig Charles, who Craig Charles.
I know Craig very much from Red Dwarf, and he did a poem. Okay. He started with a poem. Black people don't have bruises, is it? I think was his first poem.
He was doing a lot of that stuff, and we were performing together, actually, me and Craig, and he had a thing called What For. He had a band, and he was performing. It's a crap band, but it was so what, that's how you learn. You learn by being crap. You start off being crap, and then you learn to be good. So there was Craig, and we had mime artists, and we had the merciless mimic, who was Michael Tate, who was probably the worst impressionist you'd ever heard in your life. But people would pay to come and see all this crap, They'd pay to, and we'd do these like performance things, where we'd have simultaneous things going on in Berlin. Or we'd tell people we had simultaneous things going on in Berlin, and we want you to raise your glasses at the same time. This is before we had the internet, and we can do that now, can't we? But we were doing all this stuff, and people just went along with it, and they loved it.
It sounds incredibly vibrant. It sounds like
it was brilliant.
It was quite a liberating place to be an artist, to be a performer.
Yeah, well, there were no rules, We didn't have any rules. We were just making it up as we went along. We were young people just having fun, really, with the form, and just making up all these things and seeing where it goes and where's it going to take us, And that was really the start, I suppose, the start of my artistic career, when I became an artist and realised what art can be. Art can be freeing and liberating and stuff like that. And
as a fine artist, as opposed to being a graphic designer, making work task.
That's right, where you can express yourself. You can find expression in art, which you can't find anywhere else.
So just one last thing before we move on to talking about your career more true, rather than develop up to it. Do you think that nowadays that scene that was there could happen in Liverpool? I know it's difficult because you have to see it through the eyes of a person who's now lived a life instead of a young person, but
could it happen now?
Yeah,
it could happen now. But it needs young people to have that wanting for it to happen. If you've got the desire to happen, of course it can. I mean, I saw so often you meet young people who say, "Oh, it's all been done before. We can't do that. There's nothing we can do. Oh, it was all done in the 60s when the flower." And I said, no, it's not all been done before. I get despairing at young people sometimes because they're kind of like. They think it's all been done before, but it hasn't. It's all yet to be done, I mean, we can do it, but they've got to want to do it and make it happen. If you got a group of people, it only takes a small number of people, to change things and to make things happen. Small number of people get together, and they change, and they're a catalyst. It becomes a catalyst, And that's I've always believed that people on the fringes of society, on the edge of what's happening, are the people who change society and make the changes, And there's the people who are a bit different and can see society from the outside, can actually look at society a different way and make changes. You've just got to believe you can change it. 4 guys we made certain changes. We weren't the only ones, but there was a time and an energy there that made it happen. And like you say, nothing happens in a vacuum. Maybe this coronavirus will actually, spark off some kinds of creativity in people that they didn't even think existed, and we go in a different direction and do something. We can still change the world.
Maybe there'll be space for that as well, because I would argue that potentially one of the things that happened for you guys in the 70s was that it was affordable and accessible for you guys to do this.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe it wasn't for a while. Maybe there was too much commercial interest, which had invaded everywhere and occupied too much space for there to be room. And maybe a collapse gives space for new growth. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, we had punk rock, which started it all. And then we had post-punk rock, and then we had, new wave and all that stuff. And we were part of that trajectory, as it were.
Yeah.
We were just along on that. And maybe we need it to happen again. And but yeah, of course, it can happen again. The circumstances are right. Anything can happen again. We can change. We can do anything.
100%. So we reached 1984, and you get Paul McCartney on. It seems like this is your swan song at Breakout. You interview him. Did you meet him personally?
I didn't meet him. I didn't meet Paul. Not at that stage, I didn't.
Okay.
I did meet him later, but at that stage, it was kind of like the editor. The editor was chosen to go down, and we were all like, why can't we go down? We all felt ourselves to be more important than the editor. we were equal, but we all said we put more into it than you have. Why can't we go? And we all wanted to go down and meet Paul, but we didn't. He went and did an interview with him, and but I had the pleasure of doing the layout for the pages, and Linda McCartney sent us some photos and stuff, so I had them photos, and things like that was quite nice, But yeah, I mean the Paul McCartney thing was the swan song, and after that it went downhill.
But did you leave before it went downhill? Were you gone out of it, or did you see the decline? Or
I left at the cusp of that, and then we all started disagreeing on stuff, like any band, I suppose. We'd run our course. We'd done as much as we felt we could do, and we all wanted to move on in our various ways. I mean, Paul wanted to go and do his thing with the band, and Neil became more business-like and into the business and the money and stuff like that, and we were never interested in the money. And I wanted to do other artistic things. I wanted to explore, my creativity, I suppose. And so we all went different ways, and eventually, like all these things, it folded and became, I think Neil limped on for a few years with Breakout, but after that Paul McCartney issue, that was it. I suppose that was it. We proved our point. We'd done it, and the music scene had changed as well. So it had all changed, and we'd done what we needed to do.
Well, how did you further your creativity then? The thing that you wanted to do, you wanted to leave and try and find yourself as an artist, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So, but for an artist, you got to make a living. You got to do something on you as an artist. So, I went to work at Knowsley Adult Education Centre, and I was working as in teaching adults how to do things like art and design and stuff like that.
And when you went for the job interview, what was the job interview? I've run this magazine. I've done an A level. I've done this. I've done that. I can do this. Is it that kind of thing?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, and it was kind of like, okay, we'll give you a job. It was only short term. It was only for 2 years, I think. A 2-year job, and so I did these. Started teaching adults how to do art and stuff like that, and adult learning skills, they were called, adult learning skills course. And
And is this for them to have a career, or is this just for their own personal betterment, or?
This was for personal betterment, I suppose. Knowsley, at the time, and still is, one of the poorest places in England. It's really poverty. There's a lot of poverty there, and it was to encourage art and creativity in young adults and adults basically, and just to, adult learning skills. As people who've left school and perhaps not achieved what they want to achieve, they go to the adult centre and they do these courses and stuff like that. So it's kind of like that kind of thing. And I was it was through there that I came in contact with the workers educational movement, which was a writing group.
And I take it by the sounds of it, it's a left-wing writing group. It's the
workers. It was kind of like Jimmy McGovern was part of it, and there were other writers and stuff like that, and they were linked to the university, Liverpool University, and it was through that I started teaching illustration at Liverpool University. So I did book illustration and stuff like that. I did a weekly thing, so I was making a living through that as well in the evenings, and then I'd do the adult education things, and then
can I get the idea of the chronology right? So you leave Breakout.
Mm-hmm.
For 2 years, you're doing the adult education in Knowsley.
Oh, yeah.
And is it the end of these 2 years that you then do the workers' writing group?
No, it was actually during that period that I started doing that. That was
And did that directly lead, like, one day I'm doing this, the next day I'm doing this? What was the process to get you into lecturing in Liverpool University?
Well, it was because I was working at I was running these courses, these art courses at the adult education, and we'd do them every day basically. And this woman called Trisha Jenkins, who worked at Liverpool University, she would come in, and I knew that I was interested in writing. I said, well, would you be interested in doing some illustration courses at the university? I thought, illustration courses at the university? Are you going to pay me? Yeah, all right. Yeah. Okay, we'll do some illustration courses. So I didn't know much about illustration at the time. I knew basically how to draw and stuff like that. So so I learned a lot about how to structure a course, how to structure a synopsis, I suppose, of a course following a course to its logical conclusion and stuff like that. So I learnt all about that.
And is that for a degree? Do people get a degree in illustration at the end of it?
They would used to get little units at the end of it for completing it. So it was quite kind of like one where you get a little certificate saying you have got so many units towards whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, you'd get a course certificate that would give you a unit for completing this course. So you'd go on a course, and it's one of those evening things where you'd go on it for so many weeks and that. So yeah, they'd get that, and
so you learn how to structure that and how to present it.
I learned how to do that. I learned how to stand up in front of people and give lectures about this, that, and the other.
That was the next thing I was going to ask: were you the guy who walked on stage who tore the mask off when you were doing the lectures? It's the same performative.
Same guy. I was trying to, and I still had that in me to kind of. It was of course, lecturing is a performance. It's teaching people is a performance, and the best teachers are the best performers. They perform and they inspire as well in that performance. It's that creative energy as well. It's that energy to inspire people. As long as you're not bullshitting them, you can get away with it. So I used to do that. And so it lended to that performance type of thing again. So I did that for a few years, and then I think I moved on to become when all that was over.
Well, just before we do that, are you presenting art? You're creating art still personally?
Yeah, I'm still creating art. I'm still doing paintings. I'm doing oil paintings at home and stuff like that.
And are you showing them in galleries? Are you trying to sell them? Are you using that as a form of?
I was just beginning to do that towards the end of that period. I was starting to exhibit them. I was trying to sell them in Liverpool. Actually, there was a few galleries in Liverpool.
Because are we in 85, 86 now?
85, 86. Yes, we are.
And so you've been painting for 10 years. So you must have a lot of paintings. Like,
well,
where did it all go?
I did. Well, a lot of them I tore up and burnt.
Really?
I had crazy periods of supposed depression and stuff like that. I tore a lot of them up and destroyed them. I was just
were you unhappy with them? I mean, it seems like an obvious question to ask, but
unhappy with them. Some of them I regret tearing up. I wish I'd never done it, but there were just fits of anger and passions, I suppose. I was just you get despairing about things, you know.
Yeah, of course.
In passions and stuff, and I was tearing stuff up.
And did you think that the work wasn't good enough? Did you see that it didn't communicate what you wanted to communicate?
Yeah, all of that stuff, self-doubt and everything. I was riddled with self-doubt. I've always been riddled with self-doubt, and that's never left me. I have that now. I have self-doubt now. Every time we go out on the street, I have self-doubt, and so that will always be there.
Yeah.
And so, I have this moments of despair where I just wanted to destroy everything.
And when you're thinking about the work, if the work was perfect at that moment, what would the work be? What did you want that work to be at that time? What's the virtue, the goal, the nirvana of that work? For grasping for the right term to use to try and ask it.
Of the work, I was painting a lot of. I started painting a lot of self-expressive things, abstracts. I did a lot of abstracts and stuff like that. I just didn't think they were good enough, and I did at the time. I went through periods where I thought they were brilliant, and then I went through periods I thought, shit, just got to get rid of it all. I just got really. Sometimes I get really drunk and thinking, and a lot of time kind of repainting, making new paintings. I couldn't store all this stuff anywhere, So it's kind of like it became a disposable kind of like thing for me, and it never sat well with me. Actually, the fact that I was actually producing a product, this idea of a product got me, that you're producing this stuff to sit on someone's wall or to illustrate someone's book and stuff like that it never kind of like, I didn't want to produce products, I didn't want to produce an art product. The best thing anybody ever told me in my career was, it was an art lecturer actually, who said to me, this is when I was just starting off learning. I think it was when I was doing my A-levels. You've got to know your limitations. She said to me, you've got to know your limitations. You've got to know where your limitations lie. Bad thing. Don't say that to me, because I want to know where my limitations are. So I want to explore them limitations and see where that takes me. I don't know my limitations, and I don't think I've got any. I've got as many I'm only as limited as I want to be. And for someone to say you've got to know your limitations is to say that, it was a very class-ridden thing. And I viewed the art world as being very class-ridden. I came from the wrong side of the tracks, and I can't be an artist. I can't be what I want to be because I've got to know my limitations. Wow.
And was the whole thing of the net, because this is the other thing, I did a fine art degree as a young man, and I noticed there was a lot of snobby networking, and there was the way to have a right discourse about the work. It doesn't matter what the work is in the end, it's about the discourse. It's about how you wrap the work up. Yeah,
it's a load of shit. So it's all this shit that just like got me. I just rebelled against it all. I was just I thought I'm never going to make a career as an artist, because I've got all that to deal with. There'll always be a glass ceiling. I could never crack that open. At that time, that's what I thought. I could never do that because I don't go around with a spoon in my mouth. I can't be arty farty and joining all this crap. I can't be crap. I just got to be what I am.
Yeah. And so when you took stuff to a gallery, this must have been quite a difficult experience then, because I'd assume a gallery wants you to do that. They want you to make that dance.
Of course, they want me to, pay all of that shit. I didn't want. So I couldn't do that. I couldn't become something I'm not. I am this working class kid who just wants to be an artist and doesn't want to get a proper job working in a factory. I want to do something that has no limitations.
And so did the gallery you didn't sell every piece? It wasn't a critical success?
Well, it's kind of like the people coming into the galleries either don't like your work, don't understand you, don't know where you're coming from, or you can't just do art for people who I can't, to a formula. I can't formularize.
They want to know how to consume it. They want to be easily consumed.
Yeah, exactly, and it's still like that today in many respects. It's still formulaic art, and you can see it everywhere you go. I see it everywhere. It's still very much like that now. I go into private views. I end up slagging off everyone who's there. I think, please look at these tossers. I just can't help myself. And that's just I have this kind of.
Well, I can empathise. I left a fine art degree thinking similar things. I thought it was product making, which shocked me, and I just thought most artwork is made for people to stand in white cubes who are quite creative people anyway, and it strokes their egos.
Yeah,
it doesn't have any effect on the world.
Absolutely, it doesn't. And you're just playing to the gallery, and you're just playing to the already converted. I wanted to produce art that was useful, had some kind of use, some kind
utility.
Of usage. Yeah.
And so just to get you back on your chronology, because I know we're going to come to art being in public places and having some kind of influence over the broad public.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you do after lecturing in Liverpool University? So we're up to about 86, I think, 87 now, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I set up my own art studio after that. I thought I have to go freelance. I have to become a freelance artist.
And did you manage to get savings from, because you've worked quite hard for 12, 13 years now?
Yeah, savings after a fashion. I mean, I had enough money to think I could do it. I can set up this studio. I can do something. So I took over at the top floor of a building in where was it, Duke Street, I think, in Liverpool, and it was a dodgy little room up there. And I rented it out basically. I set up an art studio there. Its first one, called it Crafty Designs. Is it Crafty Designs? Yeah. And I did a little sign for myself, and I started producing. It was kind of like a graphics design business for again, going back to the design. It's just a way of making money for local businesses. So I do like little adverts that they wanted for newspaper designs and stuff like that, and it was all based upon my experience that I'd learned in the past and stuff like that. I'd have a few businesses coming in, and had a bit of work coming in, but it wasn't really making much money, And
you just paying the bills, or was it not even?
It wasn't even that, I wasn't even paying the rent at times, It's really hard. It's really hard. So I was doing it for about 6 months, and thought, this is getting really, really ridiculous. And I was with Catherine then, my partner now. I met Catherine in 85, I think it was, and we decided, as we were talking about it, and said, well, okay, this crafty designs thing is not doing good, is it? So we thought we'd do something else, and we thought we'd try the craft market. And so we started making these jester sticks. It was a thing that we could do together. We were looking for something that we could do together. And so we did things based around jesters, of all things. Jesters, the medieval jesters, the pig's bladders on sticks and things like that. Again, it was kind of a street arty thing, and we started thinking about these jesters, and we started researching the way they were designed and stuff like that. And we'd make little puppet jesters, and we'd make jesters for weddings, because the people would have themed weddings,
like a medieval theme.
Medieval themed weddings. So we'd make these
Renaissance wedding.
Bespoke jesters, which would sell for about £60 or £70 each. They were real works of art. They were hand painted little porcelain faces and velvet headdresses with little bells on, and then you'd have painted sticks. The sticks were lovely painted harlequin designs.
Why did you originally decide jesters?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we just, it's kind of like it was something different. It was something that wasn't there before. We'd never seen these things. It's just unusual. I'm always attracted to the unusual, the things that people aren't doing,
Yeah.
And it wasn't it wasn't something you immediately think, you're going to make a lot of money out of that. But it was something that we'd enjoy making. These little handcrafted items became, again, it was another obsession. It was kind of like, oh, we can really make something with these. We can do something different. It was about being different. It was always about being different, not about making money or chasing that. We weren't interested in chasing money. We were interested in doing something that hadn't been done before.
And so, when you were researching, how would one research this? Did you look at historical books, old tombs and this kind of thing?
Yeah, of course. Back then there was no internet, so we'd go into the libraries and we'd look for anything, and we'd ask the librarian, "Do you have any books on anything about jesters and the way they dressed and stuff like that?" And they'd get these little books out, and they'd get a pile of books, and they'd just sort of say, "Okay, we've got a little chapter in here, and we'll go through them." And we'd look at them, and they'd have some little illustrations there showing these little jester sticks and things like that. And so we'd make a little drawing, and we'd come up with some ideas about how we could do this, and then we'd do all these designs, and then we'd see these little gargoyles. There was little gargoyles in Liverpool city centre on one of the pubs. There was these little gargoyles of jesters with little cats and stuff. I said, we'll do some of them, and we'll do some plaques and stuff. So we were making these things. It was like a little cottage industry where we'd make these little things, all jester themed around jesters and these little street performers and stuff, things. It's kind of going well. Again, we were in the wrong market at the wrong time, and we had all these Chinese imports of these little toys coming along, and we couldn't compete with that because we were handcrafted and stuff like that, and it became very hard. The work became very hard, hard to do. And so,
how does it become hard? I mean, I hate to delve into something painful, but are you waiting for orders? Are you trying to get stores to buy these things?
Yeah, it was all that, and kind of the price point as well, because it was taking us many hours to produce these. It took us lots of hours to produce these finely decorated items. They were like little miniature works of art. We spent hours on them, many hours, and we could only sell them for about, at the most, £60, and even that was expensive because people were saying, you should only be charging about £30, and then the store gets the other half, and it was kind of like, this is.
And you don't want to be labouring over stuff making £15 a day. That's not tenable, really.
Exactly, and it was kind of like we can't carry on doing this. It's just, I mean, although they're beautiful items, we can't really sell them for as much as we'd like to get back for them,
Yeah.
So we eventually we called called it a day, and I carried on painting, and I started exhibiting in galleries and things, and started to try and paint stuff from that. Anyway, I suppose that took us to about the early 90s.
And are you selling stuff in these galleries? Do you ever get pieces sold? You do. You are. So you are selling some things.
We're selling stuff. We're getting by. We are selling a few paintings here, a few paintings there, and we're doing what every artist does. You know, when they're painting work, they're trying to just get by. It's not an easy road being an artist. You know, being a visual artist is not an easy road. Well, it's not an easy road in any of the art forms. Is hard. You know?
But visual art is particularly hard because if you're a musician, you know, you can go and play in a venue. If you're a performer, you can go and perform on the street. You can go and try and get some there. If you're a visual artist, people have to buy your work. If they don't buy your work, there's no profit to be made out of it in any way.
Of course, and you spend a lot of hours. You know, a lot more hours than people actually realise in producing art. Than would ever be apparent in the works themselves. You couldn't make as much as you do put into it, and so we were stumbling by. We were getting by. Myself and Catherine were kind of like trying to work out ways of doing it.
And are you renting? Are you living in the back of a van? How are you sustaining yourself through this time?
We're living in rented flats, basically around Liverpool. Not great, but you know, we were. It was a difficult time for us. The late 80s, early 90s.
And did the government subsidise you as an artist in any way? Was there any kind of support that was given?
No. I mean, we became unemployed for a time because we couldn't sustain it. So there was periods of unemployment, and we were signing on and just trying to subsidise our income through doing art. You know,
like as you say, this is a very common life for an artist.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very common, and it's a road we choose to live. You know, and we say we can't complain about it because that's the way. You know, if we wanted to be like everyone else, well, we'd just probably do it, wouldn't we? We'd probably go and stack shelves and wherever. Yeah, but we don't. We choose not to.
So we're in the early 90s, and you're struggling. Is it quite soon you discover street painting and chalk drawing? So I assume if you're hard up at this moment, this is one of the perfect times for this to happen.
Well, there was a festival that came along just at around that time. In fact, it was 93. So it was early 90s, 1993. A festival called Vision Fest, which one of the painters actually came into the gallery. I was manning the gallery because the painters back then we had works in galleries, but to make the galleries functional, we had to man them voluntarily because that's what we did. As a collective of artists, we would manage this art. There's a place called Art Space, and it was in Clayton Square in Liverpool, if people remember it. And there was a collective of artists there, and we'd go in once a week, each one of us, to man the galleries and to make sure we could, you know, we'd sell works on other people's behalf, and we'd all have work in there. And we'd sell work on a weekly basis. Some weeks we'd do better than others. And we would. This painter came in and said, "Have you heard about this Vision Fest festival?" Yeah, I've heard about it. It was on the periphery of my thoughts at the time. Yeah, it was a kind of like it was the forerunner of what was the what became the Liverpool Biennial of Art, which is a very big thing. And they told us about this Vision Festival. One of the producers of Vision Fest is producing a street art festival, and they're willing to pay artists 100 quid to go along and do
100 quid.
100 quid. Oh, that's good. 100 quid to do a bit of street art.
And did they let you put a hat out at the same time as 100 quid?
No, they didn't. They didn't allow that. No, I wouldn't like that. But they kind of like I didn't know what the fuck is street art? Well, I'm not a fucking street art. I'm not even a street artist. I'm a.
Did you think it was graffiti? Is that kind of what you thought of when you hear street art?
It's kind of like I didn't know what it was to begin with. It was just going on about street art. Well, I knew about street art because, of course, I did know about street art. I knew about Covent Garden, and I have fond memories of going down to Covent Garden in the mid-80s with Catherine, actually, and we came across a group known as the Antibodies. I don't know if you know the Antibodies. If anybody out there knows them, we'd love to see them again, because they really left an indelible mark on my brain. They're actually etched on my brain as the first street artists that I knew that actually took street art seriously. A physical theatre group they were. They were absolutely brilliant. There's only two of them, but they left an indelible mark on my psyche. Anyway, this street art thing, it's a floor art, so it's a floor art festival of floor art, and 93, and I'd never done pavement art before. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't do it. Didn't know anything about it. We weren't allowed to actually do anything on the pavement. It had to be done on paper.
So it's canvas spread across the floor.
Yeah, or something, So I didn't know what I was doing. I just went along to this. I thought, 100 quid, I'm going to do it, So I got this lining paper, decorated lining paper, and I put it in 3 lines across, and I did a picture on it and stuff, and it was all blowing all over the place. It was terrible. It was the worst thing I've ever done. And I thought, what am I doing? What am I thinking? Oh, anyway, I'm getting on quickly. I was really gravely.
So it didn't strike you as something that's going to be part of your future at that time?
No, I didn't think it was. But do you know what? It was going on, and they had this festival every year.
Did you see people that day? Did you go and look at the other artists that were working?
I did, and there were some fine artists who came up from London. So they'd imported artists from all over the country, basically. These artists, and they were doing a great job. And I thought, these are great. These artists are really brilliant.
Canvas pieces, painted canvas pieces.
Yeah. They were really quality street artists. They'd been doing it a long time, and I thought, this is. They really did turn me on to street art. Actually, I thought this is good. What these are doing are good, these guys. And so the next year, I went back. I sort of went back. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna conquer this thing, this street art thing. So I was doing it for.
Just before you say go, did it romance you? Because it seems like a lot of things you talked about previous to this would chime with street art. There's no commodity to be bought or sold. It's experiential. It's not got that snobby nature to it. Everyone can enjoy it. Was that something you were aware of when you saw it that first year? Did that stuff chime in you?
Yeah, it did. Do you know what? It was kind of like it was again. Although I was setting out this stuff, and the work was crap. I know the work was crap, and the way I was doing it was crap, but it was kind of like a performance. It was kind of like going back to the old breakout days where we'd just do stuff, and we wouldn't know where we're going with it, So it's kind of that. It was that kind of. This is just like the old days. It was like a performance art. Now, you don't think of maybe pavement art. Pavement art is almost like a minority sport in a minority sport. It's kind of like there aren't that many pavement. The street art scene is kind of dominated with performers, which is great. I mean, I love performers. I love,
It's performers and musicians in constant battle.
Yes, that's what it is. And it's all kind of that. And then we come along as pavement artists, and we're just like a totally different genre. We're like kind of like, what are these people? And there's not that many of us around. But when we're there, and we're there with. How can we compete with performers, and we've thought we can't compete with performers. So it's all kind of that. And anyway, it was that kind of, it just inspired me. And I just kind of like, well, there's not many of us around, and it's the difference. It was the difference of it, and it was the fact is that it was anti art establishment type thing, and it's a place where you can't produce a product. It was that way you can't produce anything to sell. There's nothing to sell in street art other than the art itself, and that gets washed away, you know. So it's that kind of thing. I thought, yeah, this is good. There's some mileage in this. We can take this somewhere, you know. So that became a new obsession for me. That idea of.
So did you work on it from the first year to the second year? Had you been on the streets of Liverpool plying the trade?
I did actually. I started busking. On the streets, and I got all kinds of I learned the craft. I started learning the craft of pavement art.
So I usually call it, if you don't go to an official place, I call it going renegade. So you're not in a festival. So when you did your first day going renegade, what was it like?
Oh, shit myself. Shit myself. God almighty, what am I doing here? And
what were the things going through your head then when you're going to set up for the first day?
I was just a state of panic. I thought, there's no safety net, you know. I thought, there's no safety net. No one's going to protect me here. And you know, God almighty. And so I took this
Were you afraid of people walking over the work?
I was afraid of everything.
At you?
I was afraid of everything. I made the first big mistake was I put a tin out. I put a tin out and I put some money in, you know, just to start it off. But I turned me back on it, and I was there. I was there painting, and these bloody kids had taken bloody money out me bloody. And I came away. Actually, came away that day with less money than I thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? So I learned a big lesson there. Don't turn your back on the money, because the kids will nick it out your tray. So, because you're on your hands and knees, remember, and you're concentrating. So I made a big mistake there. And there was the other guy, you know, who I was doing this. I went out at Christmas time, and at Christmas time you think you do all these Christmassy themed things. Well, I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do The Lost Soul by Michelangelo. And it was the most miserable picture you'd ever seen in your life of a lost soul. Basically, it's the most miserable Christmas thing you would want at Christmas time. But I thought that's the rebel in me, you know. So I did this Lost Soul on the street, and some guy came along with a tin of beans and chucked it on the paint. And I said, "What are you doing, mate?" He said, "Oh, well, I've given him a feed, haven't I?" Oh, do you know what? And that's my experience. Oh, it's a real education going out on the street. I'd recommend every artist do that. You know, do go out on the street and learn your craft. You know, so I was doing that for a few years.
And what did you learn over it? Because we're going to touch on you when you came back to the festival same time. So what did you learn in that year? What was the big, in terms of the craft and the being a street painter, street artist? What did you learn?
I learned a lot about humanity. I learned a lot about myself as well, and what people want and what they don't want and stuff like that. And I learned to also not give people what they want. I would not give people what they want. So I wouldn't paint the Mona Lisa and stuff like that. I'd paint something that they wouldn't recognize. And you know, I was kind of like trying to be anti-establishment, I suppose. I was having fun with the fact that you can go out on the street, and again, it wasn't for the want of making money. I wasn't really going out to put a hat out and make money, you know. I mean, people confuse street artists with, well, they put us into a lot of different categories, like beggars and, oh, you're a beggar. I've never begged for anything in my life, you know. I don't live in a caravan, and I don't do this, I don't do that. But they have lots of assumptions about street artists and where we're coming from and why we do stuff, you know. And for me, it was a lifestyle. It was a kind of like, I want to do this because it engages me and it engages my mind, and there's a philosophy behind it that I can relate to. I relate to this philosophy. I relate to these lots of very clever people going out on the street and being part of all of that, going out on the street because they choose to go out on the street, not because they have to. Nobody has to go out on the street and make a living like this, and we don't make it hard because it's hard. It just is hard. We don't do it because of that, but we do it because it's our choice to do it. It's our choice to do it. It's our philosophical choice to do it. We're all attempting to make the world a better place, and I thought I was making the world a better place by being out there. And I was meeting people. I was meeting people on the streets who would tell me that, seeing you today doing that, and I've been watching you all day producing that picture, and it's put a lump in my throat, and it's and these were people who'd come back from the Falklands and really sort of you touch people with your art. You touch people by just being there and doing stuff, and you talk to people, and it's the ability to talk to people and learn. You'd learn from all these different characters you talk to. Some of the most interesting people I've ever talked to are on the streets, and who would just come in contact with. You'd never come into contact with in normal life. If you had a normal 9 to 5, it's a real education. That period was a real education for me as an artist.
And so what was it like when you went back the next year then?
I was much better the next year. I was a bit better. I was ill the year before. I didn't know anything. So I'd learned a bit more, and I'd become better at the craft and stuff like that. And eventually, after a few years, I actually I met the person who had organised it, who said, "Oh, I'm not carrying it on anymore." In fact, me and Catherine, we both were walking down the street, met this guy, John Brady, his name was. He's a good lad. And he'd organised Vision Fest. He said, "I'm not doing it anymore." And we thought, "Oh, why not? It's great, it's a great thing and a good thing to organise this festival." It really sparked my interest. He said, "Well, I'm not organising it, but it doesn't mean you can't organise it." Me and Catherine looked at each other and thought, "We can't organise an arts festival. What is he talking about?" And then we went home and we thought about it and thought, well, nobody else is going to do it. So John decided not to do it. And, these 100 and so artists that it brought from all over the country that had no work, there'd be no focus. So me and Catherine took on the organising of this street art festival. That was in 97. So about 97, we organised our first street art.
What was so when you say we took it over, what happened? Did he arrive with a lump of paperwork? Went, poof, this is yours now? Or?
No, we didn't have anything. We didn't. We said to John, have you got any contacts we can use and stuff like that? And he just never got back to us, He never gave us anything. And we thought, oh, shit, we've got nothing. We had nothing, literally. And we thought, well, okay, let's just do it.
And how did you do it? Like, young people might watch this and wonder, be in a similar situation. So how does someone even go about beginning the task?
Yeah. I mean, they'd be right to think that. How would you go about doing it? We had a few contacts with people who had been part of the festival in previous years. And some of them people were actually exhibiting in and around Liverpool. So we put the word out to them, and we went round to the arts officers. It was at 3 different places: a Liverpool arts officer, the arts officer at Sefton, Brian Wake, and arts officer at New Brighton. And we wanted a touring festival. We wanted this festival to tour. So, I mean, no small ambition, is it? Not just to do a festival, but one that toured as well. So 3 venues over a weekend, over 3 days. So we convinced them. We managed to go in there and say, look, we've been part of this festival for so long. Will you give us some money to make it happen? Will you give us some funds? And we went in, and they literally were they were grilling us basically, because they didn't know us from Adam. So we got a bit of a grilling, and eventually, after much to and fro, they gave us like $2.5 grand for each day, which is not a lot of money.
Not a lot of money at all.
It was, but we were determined to put it on, and we thought, well, even if we only make 200 quid for the entire thing, well, that'll do it, won't it? At least we can say we've done it. But it was important to us that if we're going to put this on, that the artists get paid for it. And that was a big thing for us. We're not going to ask the artists to do it for nothing. We're going to pay them. I said we're going to give them 100 quid. And so we all that $2.5 grand for each day, which works out for 3 days. What's that? I can't remember. Anyway, we had 3 times $2.5 grand to spend on for £100.
$7.5 grand.
Yeah, £7.5 grand. Okay. So we said, okay, what we'll do is we'll divide that into £100, see how many artists we can get to take part, and
you got your own 200 quid pay each, yeah. So you've got you're looking at 70 artists.
Yeah, that's it, something like that.
Yeah.
And so and so that's what we did, and we invited artists it was mostly from around the local area. But we called it an international festival of street arts, which meant all different kinds of things. It meant performance art, which was big, and we had walkabouts, and we had musicians, and we had pavement arts, and we had sculptors, and we had pavement, pottery, we had installation artists, really obscure kind of conceptual art going on. So it wasn't just chalking art, it was all different kinds of art.
How did you work out all the logistics for all of this? Who goes where and when people do what? It seems like it's an incredible amount of organisation just to figure out who does what and where.
Yeah, well, Catherine was good at doing stuff like that. Catherine sort of did most of the organisation and the logistics. I couldn't. If it was left to me, I'd probably end up like total chaos, But I mean, she was sort of doing all these sheets and stuff, and sort of putting people in places and stuff, and saying, "No, okay, we'll have them there, and we'll have the performers coming out in such and such a time."
And how much did you have to talk to the council to get this happening? Because I can imagine nowadays, if you tried to do that, the council would want 3 brick-size pieces of paperwork filled out.
Yeah, amazingly enough, because we did it on the back of Vision Fest, and they all knew about Vision Fest, and we did it the same way as Vision Fest did, and they basically just gave us the money and said, "Get on with it."
They gave you access to the land. Did they cordon things off with the wardens?
They didn't actually put any infrastructure in place. We just said to them, "This is going to happen on such and such a date, and can you make everyone aware?" The highways departments and the street wardens and things like that. Can you make them aware that this is going to happen? And they would go around and hopefully tell everybody. Sometimes they didn't tell everybody, and we got into a bit of trouble over that as well, because some of the wardens would come down heavily on things that were happening that they didn't realise were part of this arts festival. But that's anyway. So they would just literally give us the money, and they didn't even ask for risk assessment or anything, or you didn't have to have third-party insurance. I mean, it's amazing, really. It's quite amazing. You wouldn't get that today, would you? So it's kind of but we were just doing it on the seat of our pants and thought, right, okay, this would make a good mix for a festival. So we have so many performers, we have so many these, and we have performers coming up from Liverpool, from London.
Yeah.
Some really good quality performers, and we'd put on this festival of all kinds of things happening, and they were really good. We look back on them fondly, this festival went on for till about, I think we called it a day in about 2003.
So you did
So,
5 years?
yeah, 5 years of festivals, and this festival, it taught us a lot about organising festivals. Again, we didn't train to do any of this. We didn't know any of this. It's the best way to learn stuff is by doing it. A lot of stuff you can't learn in books, and that you learn it on the job. And so we were learning it as we were doing it.
And did that open doors for you as you went after in 2003 when you're going forward to the next project?
It did, and it just it put us in. It gave us a lot of experience about what works and what doesn't on the street, because of course, we were employing artists to take part in that every year, and we would watch these artists, we would watch the performers, and we would watch the different art forms as they were happening. A lot of the time, I wasn't doing any art during the festival because there wasn't enough time. There wasn't time for myself or Catherine to produce any art, and so there was a bit of a underlying niggleness because I wanted to create stuff. I always wanted.
You were left administrating.
Yeah, I was administrating and making it happen and stuff, which was great, but I wanted to actually produce art. But it was great to mix with these people and all these different people and different ideas about what art is, and some of them had fantastic ideas about how to produce street art, and they were really off the wall stuff, like the guy who would get inside a canvas bag and allow people to paint him, and stuff like that. And what a vulnerable position that is to be inside a canvas bag, allowing people to paint you. You only need one psychopath to come along and push you in front of a car or something,
But also as well, it's such a different dynamic, because you'll know this by working as a street painter, that there is, even though we don't do it for money, you have to pay your bills. So an element of it becomes the managing to make some money at the end of it.
Yeah.
And getting in a canvas bag and getting painted, I'd suggest probably wasn't a great earning working everyday street show.
No, it wasn't. It was that's right. It's not. But it gave people the opportunity, because we're paying them 100 quid to come along with these new ideas, because we did say we want innovative new ideas. We want new ideas, and so he would do this. He'd come along, put himself in a canvas bag, and then stretch the canvas out, and he'd have it he'd prepare a frame for it at the end. So all these people who'd come along and painted that canvas bag, he'd stretch it all out, and he'd frame it. He'd put it in a frame like a picture,
I wonder if it's got an artifice.
I know, yeah, it was great. But it was great though, and also it taught us how people react and how they connect with the art. They're making stuff and they're doing stuff. They're not just watching it; they're participating in the art.
And it seems like a great forum for that, because, as you say, people aren't desperate to earn a hat.
Yeah,
they are genuinely experimenting.
Exactly, and it was that sense of that idea of creating. Experimentation was big. It was big. It was important. It's most important that artists are allowed to be artists on the street. The old saying is you're never going to find any art on the street. You're about as likely to find art on the street as you are to find pearls in the gutter. You're not going to find them, But we proved them wrong, and we did pure art on that street during them festivals. There's a lot of things during that I look back on and think that was amazing. How did we get away with that? Health and safety wouldn't allow it today, and maybe that's the problem we've got. We're not experimenting enough, and we're not innovating enough. And it was the idea of that spirit of innovation, going right back to the days of Breakout and the early 80s music scene in Liverpool, where we'd have a blank canvas and we'd try and fill it with whatever came into our minds, and that was what happened at that festival. I can look back fondly at that has been a pivotal point in our careers as street artists, you know. So
So it sounds like you managed to take a lot of experimentation by these people. You got a huge amount of experience and knowledge from watching them work and gained a huge amount of understanding.
Yeah.
Did you then straight away take that and then try and apply it onto street work?
We wrapped the festival up in about 2003 because we weren't making a lot of money on it, and we'd done it for 5 years, and 5 years is enough to do anything, you know. And you think, oh well, okay, we can't do this festival anymore, not in the way it's been done, and we've done a lot of things with it, and that's enough now. And so I wanted to make art myself, and Catherine kept asking the question, when are we ever going to make any money out of this? when are we going to ever do it? You know, I mean, God almighty, we've got bills to pay, and we always have bills to pay and stuff like that. I said, oh, we'll make something, something will come up. So I started asking the question, can we, as two people, myself and Catherine, produce art on the street with complete strangers? Can we do that? And can we sell that to festivals and events? Because we understood festivals and events. That's one thing that they'd come out. We understood it from an organizational point of view, but we also understood the dynamics of festivals and events. So can we produce something that's just me and Catherine, that would involve hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people on the street, complete strangers who had no artistic ability, perhaps limited contact with the arts? Can we produce them and encourage them to create art on the streets? And it's a question that we've asked ever since. And so we actually started this a bit earlier than 2003. We started thinking about this about 2001, I think, where we started experimenting in the back garden with designs and concepts of how we could involve people. What we really knew that we had to do was we needed to set up a boundary for people to immediately understand what we're doing. So they didn't even have to ask the question, what are you doing? They got it straight away. They had to just get it like that, you know. And so we kind of we were just trying out lots of different things, lots of ideas. We were playing around with things, and we came up with a concept where it was working, but it wasn't nice. Anyway, what we thought we'd do, we thought we needed some support to develop this idea. So we contacted Business in the Arts Northwest, and we got a business advisor.
What is Business in the Arts Northwest?
Business in the Arts Northwest was basically, it was giving advice to artists, and it kind of like, it gave you a mentor. It was free.
Is it a bit like the Outdoor Arts is to this day for outdoor artists?
A bit like
Outdoor Arts.
Outdoor Arts. It's kind of like that. Yeah, it was before Outdoor Arts came about, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it would give you a business. You could go to them with a business problem. Okay, so we went to them with a problem, and we said what we want to do is set up this as street artists. We want to become full-time professional street artists, and they just looked at us blank faced and shook their heads. Well, you know, nobody actually believed that we could become street artists, but they gave us the benefit of the doubt, and they gave us a business advisor who advised us on a path to take and put a business plan together. And so we went with him, and he gave us a lot of advice over a couple of months period. And we got this business plan, and we had a direction then. So we stuck to this business plan. I think Catherine was the most enthusiastic about the business plan. For visual artists, it's very difficult to keep to plans and stuff
Is
like
it because she likes to work with the logistics and she can understand?
Yeah, she's good at doing that. Yeah, she's good at doing that and keeping the books and stuff, and nagging us about the money and stuff. Stuff that we don't like to think about. So she does all that, and then I was kind of like, okay, I'll be the creative one. You do that. So we slotted into them roles for business, I suppose. And we followed this business plan. And the first thing we did was we got a business improvement grant. I think it was for about $2,000 or something like that, which actually made us take the creative plunge, as it were, because this grant meant that we had to become solely self-sufficient with so we had no gigs, we had no money, and we just had this $2,000 to see us through. And so our backs were against the wall. We had to do it, and we did it. And the first thing we did was write off to loads of different agents to try and get people to convince them that this is what we do, this is good, and for them to take us on the books. And we had a few people. So, to our surprise, we had artists, we had agents coming back to us and say, "We've got nothing like you on our books. Can we represent you?" So we had a couple of agents. We had an agent in London, and we had Fool's Paradise in Exeter, who was just brilliant, who came back and said, "Right, okay, well, put the packages together in a way we can present us with some photos, and we'll put you on the books." And they did. And suddenly we found that we were getting gigs in Singapore. We were getting gigs in Singapore, those pavement artists in Singapore. And, where you can't even drop chewing gum without getting arrested, So they had us painting the streets in Singapore and stuff like that. And we had one...
Was this overnight? Was this, you sent the stuff out and then the next month you've got gig?
Virtually.
Or did it slowly gather?
No, it didn't slowly gather at all. It was virtually within a few weeks or months, actually.
And did you stay to the original concept developed in the garden over those years, or did the concept quickly adapt and change to function in the actual working environment?
We planned it all out meticulously, what we were going to do. For instance, when we went to Singapore, we had this idea of what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And that all went out the window as soon as we got there. It just don't, what you think and what is out in a different place is totally different. And of course, by this time we'd had a lot of street art experience. But we had one philosophy, and that was to create art, something that equated to real art on the street. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't work. And sometimes it was terrible, and sometimes the weather got the better of us and washed it all away, and we didn't produce anything. But it was that challenge to create something that I would say was real art.
And did the works change regularly? I know that a lot of performers tend to get a working piece of street art, and because you're engaging with the public who have different responses all the time, people tend to get a core framework of work, and then they can experiment out of that, but it tends to stay quite similar. Did you guys have the same thing?
I think we did. We started off with a core thing, but we knew worked. So we'd do this kind of linear piece, or a piece, a spirally piece that would turn around, and pieces where you could engage as many people as possible. So it was very important to us to engage as many people as possible on the street. And so we'd have this concept idea designed that would suit a particular place. So we'd ask for digital images. It was the early days of digital images, the early 2000, as it were. But we'd ask for images of the places where they wanted us to set up and do works, and we'd look at the space and we'd think what would fit into that space. So they were all bespoke designs in kind of a way, but they all stuck to a certain formula and a certain way of doing things where it could be easily understood for passers-by to get to engage them, you know.
Sure.
And so there were these pieces where you could work on either side. And literally in Singapore, for instance, it would be like a feeding frenzy. It would be like you get literally hundreds of people descending on the art. And for us, it would just come from these festivals in Britain where, you know, people are very reluctant to get involved in art. This was like they're like piranhas, you know. They'd cover the art. You wouldn't see what was going on. You couldn't orchestrate it.
I've been told by a friend that in Asia they have a lot more of an idea of engaging with each other in public places.
Yeah.
People will all engage in something
Yeah.
going on without worry.
Yeah, it was unbelievable to us. It just like, wow, what's going on here? We can't control this. And then even the organisers were saying, people are too close together to move them away. I said, we can't. It's just like, there's a mob here, you know, there's hundreds of people. How are you going to do that? You know, you can't. But they were just going on. It was about the time of the SARS virus as well. That was happening in 2003. And we couldn't move them away. They just wanted to have fun, you know. So all the kids would get involved, and all the adults and the families would get involved and doing a bit of chalking. It's a real revelation to us to see how people really wanted to do this stuff, really wanted to get involved. And it just like blew our minds, really, the fact that they would all descend on this piece of art. And when they'd all cleared and gone, the art was there revealed. They'd all understood the concept. They understood what we were trying to do. They understood the way we were doing it. And they'd all basically, more or less, stuck to the rules. They'd all stuck to the rules, and they worked as a hive mind of people, all complete strangers, no artistic training at all. But they'd created this beautiful pattern, whatever it was, on the pavement. And it worked great, and it was just
That's me. You found happens more often than not, but people have a subconscious way of working together.
Yeah, it kind of you find it now. I mean, it's been a long learning experience, and we learn every time we go out of how this works, and we know that we have a set of rules that we know that will intuitively work and people will, and it works all the time, and it's what really turns us on to street art. You know, art can be achieved on the street, and we've done it time and time again with complete strangers. And the best thing for us is when it's done, and when it's done, we're like, it's like a puppeteer, someone who operates a puppet. And you know there's someone working that puppet behind the scenes, but you're watching the puppet intently as if it's a real thing. It's a real thing, you know. And it's the same for the art. As it appears, the art appeared as if by magic, and we've become the puppeteers, if you like. You don't see us. I mean, we disappear into the background. It's not like a performance, you know, when you're performing and it's all you. It's all you. You're there and you're performing. People know you're there. You can't hide yourself. No. But for us, it was about the art becomes the thing, and we become invisible. We're just part of it all. And I just love that. I love that moment where we just become invisible. Yeah, that speaks to my introverted mind, and it is about that mask again. Behind the mask, we're creating this stuff. You don't see us. We're just part of the crowd. There's hundreds of people, and they've done it, and they've taken ownership on this work, and it's become, and that's a really powerful thing, to think that these people who are complete strangers are on their hands and knees creating art, all equal, from all different walks of life. They're talking to each other. They're becoming friends, if you like, for that moment in time, and they're involved in creating something bigger, more interesting than the little worlds they live in, perhaps, and and they come back and they're involved with it, and they come back at the end of the day and they take photos, and I did that, I was part of that, and they take photos of that specific point where they did that art. But it's that creating something bigger than themselves and being part of something bigger than themselves for that moment. And also for the passers-by who pass by, who see it, and suddenly their environment has just changed. We give ourselves a time on this, on creating these pieces, of 4 hours, so that everything's got to be started and finished within that 4-hour period, and we've got to judge it on that period. So if that performance, our performance, if you like, is of a 4-hour duration,
So how do you begin this? Do you begin this by doing a bit of, and I'm keeping an eye on the clock because we generally like to keep the interviews now around 2 hours.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, we've got, I don't know if you're aware, we've done 1 hour 53 minutes at this moment.
Okay.
It does fly.
Yes, doesn't it?
But I'm really intrigued with this work, and I want to delve a little bit more, and I might spend an extra 10 minutes just delving into this, if you don't mind.
Yes, go on.
How do you start this work? Do you start off by doing a bit of drawing and painting yourself and explain it to people, or?
No, we don't. We don't explain anything to anyone. We do draw. We draw things out beforehand. Sometimes we don't, though. Sometimes we'll get to a hotel and we won't know what we're doing that day, and we might draw a little thing on a napkin, a little thumbnail sketch of what we're doing, and a lot of it is improvised. A lot of it is improvised on the spot, but that's down to experience. You only get to that point of improvisation when you've done a lot of this stuff.
You've developed an intuition, though.
Yeah, you develop that, and so it's kind of sometimes it can be well worked out because we've got a good idea and we thought we've never done that before, so we're going to try that and see how that works, and we're working that through. So it can take many days to work it through.
And how are you guiding? How are you guiding the what seems like random involvement of the audience?
How are we guiding it?
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of like we see it as a performance. We see it as a performance, a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So we've got 4 hours to produce this work. One of the great things was we actually appeared at the National Theatre twice. At the National Theatre, pavement artists at the National Theatre, and they gave us they set us up like a performance show, and we'd be outside the National Theatre there, and they gave us a first half, and then they'd have deck chairs around, and they'd actually have an audience in the deck chairs watching us setting up, basically drawing it out on the pavement. And then this audience, they were eating their ice cream, and then they'd come in and all descend upon us and get involved. And then we'd have an interval for 30 minutes, and they'd sell more ice cream. And then they'd all get up for the second half of the show, which we would do the second half and we'd finish. But that was perfectly illustrated how we set up the pavement art. Basically would be to do that. So we'd start it off, and people would see it developing, and they'd get involved, not really understanding what they're getting involved in. They just sort of be doing a bit of colouring or doing a bit of drawing in. And as the day went on, it progressed, and it became quite apparent what we were producing, And some of these works could go over hundreds of feet and take over entire squares and be absolutely massive works of art in 4 hours. So you're transforming people's environments for that short period of work. And we love the ephemeral nature of it, and it kind of washes away with the rain, and there's a poetry in that as well. It's all poetry. It's about poetry and art and the poetry of making stuff, and watching it wash away and all that. So, yeah.
And I suppose the last thing I'll draw on now as we're reaching the kind of end of the interview is there anything you'd say to young artists, young performers who want to do something which I've always wanted, doing a fine art degree and then going on and doing performances, trying to weave art into performance, trying to have subtext, metaphor, trying to actually create things that have some weight to them in a public place. Is there any advice you have for young artists who want to do those same kind of things, who want to see art on the street?
I'd say don't follow the money, and don't follow the ego. Just do whatever speaks to you. Whatever speaks to you and makes you learn and create stuff. Just create stuff. Don't copy. Don't become something you're not. Don't go down a road where because one thing's successful, you feel you have to make your thing successful. Try going in a different direction. Try new things that haven't been tried before. Always try new things. Don't rest on your laurels, and don't just because you've come up with a formula, stick to that formula, because you'll never transcend it. You'll never go any further than what you've already set your limits. You know where your limitations are because you've limited yourself. Don't limit yourself to that. Try out things that you're uncomfortable with. Be uncomfortable. Be who you are. That's the best advice I could ever give anyone. Works for everyone.
Thank you so much for your time, Philip Battle. It's been an amazing story. I've really genuinely enjoyed listening to it.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Matt. I didn't even talk about my book. Oh.
Well, I tell you what, I'm more than happy to give a little bit of extra time. Now we can do another 10, 15 minutes. Let's talk about your book.
Oh, okay. Well, I've actually written 3 books on the history of pavement art. And it's very much what you're doing here, Matt, which is the documentation of street artists' lives. But these are from previous lives. So this one, you can see that.
It says Skeever, Lady Skeever. What's a Skeever?
Lady Skeever.
Skeever, sorry. What's a Skeever?
Lady Skeever. That's Alice Coleman, who was the first lady pavement artist in London.
And is the Skeever a name for a pavement artist?
Skeever is an ancient name for a pavement artist. It means it's a slang name used to describe pavement artists as the writers of begging letters. Before people started putting pictures on the pavements, they used to write bits of poetry. It's the link with poetry again. They used to write these bits of poetry saying, "I'm poor, I'm destitute, oh, please give me some money," or whatever, And it was a slang term. It dates back to Elizabethan times, the word Skeever. But when the pavements started to become paved in the 1400s in London, and it all starts in London. I mean, I know you think about pavement art. When I started off thinking about pavement art, it's been something from France or somewhere like that. But we wouldn't have street art if it wasn't for London, and the things that have happened there, the liberal attitudes towards the street art that we've enjoyed for hundreds of years, literally hundreds of years.
Soon to end, Westminster will license all street performance and street art soon, possibly.
Yeah, and it is under threat, the culture of street art in Britain is actually under threat like it's never been before. And so I did that book.
Can I ask you why? Why did you decide to write that book?
Because I wanted these people to have voices. These people, I started collecting postcards and ephemera about street art. I was interested in the history of street art, and I came across these photographs and stuff. I wanted to know who these people were. A bit like you, I had a curiosity for people in the same genre that I was working in. I knew nothing about them. I had a misunderstanding about these people, and I wanted to know what their lives were like and who these people were, and I wanted to put a name to them. So I did a lot of research. I started researching, and I started doing a blog on called All My Own Work. All My Own Work, History of Pavement. That was my blog, and I started doing a weekly blog on these people and started uncovering their lives and finding out as much about them as possible. And I came across Alice Coleman, and I also came across, I've written another book called, there we go.
London Types.
Yeah, Forgotten Pavement Artists, 1850 to 1975. And that's delving into the lives of cadgers, skeevers, gutter cartoonists, and shabby pastoralists, as they were called back then. And it's
I love the term, shabby pastoralist.
Yeah, shabby pastoralist. But these were kind of like forgotten people, forgotten voices, and they had fascinating lives. Each one has a story, each one has a reason for being on the street, as rich as any of the ones that have ever appeared on your podcast, Matt, and as rich as any of us today. And they are true, real people. They have fascinating lives, they have heartache, they have all kinds of things. There's like Shakespearean tragedies and all kinds of things, but they are contemporary as well, and they had many views that we still hold today. There's an unbroken line there, that needed to be spoken about.
And I'm glad you did, because this is one of the things when I started this that I really kind of thought about, was that our history, street performance history, because it doesn't have the commoditization, there's not as many artifacts left after it, and it doesn't have the status that other forms of culture have. You don't, once the people telling the stories and the people they told the stories to are gone, the stories are gone, more or less.
Yes, absolutely. The stories are gone, and people, and the number of times that street artists get lumped into vagrancy and begging and all of that stuff, and it's a load of nonsense. It's a load of twaddle. We all know it's not like
2015, I was recently researching for a video I did on here, which was an update on Westminster Council's policy, the last 20 years nearly, of their policy with street performers. And in 2015, Business Improvement District called Holber and Westminster Council did a committee meeting where they said there was a sudden influx of performers, buskers and beggars.
Yeah.
And, it's
typical.
Yeah.
Isn't, they just do not get it. They don't understand it. And they need to understand it. And there need to be people shouting out about it. There need to be people like you and other people who I've known as well, who do shout out about it and do say, we're as valid as any other profession in the arts.
I'd say even more valid sometimes. I think that our work is more important than a lot of the work in the white cubes. Doesn't command the price, but it certainly is enjoyed and has more effect for members of the population broadly. Yeah,
it truly does. And once a street artist, always a street artist. You never stop being a street artist.
So last thing to ask as well, as a chap who believes is one of our YouTube members, Human One. Hey, Human One. He's asking, for us overseas, where do we see your art, mate?
Where do you see our art? Well, you know what? We're doing a number of online festivals at the moment. We're doing we've done a number of lockdown things, and you can actually visit. If you type in UrbanCanvas on Facebook, you can come to our Facebook page, and we've got a number of other things. And go to urbancanvas.org.uk, and you can find our webpage there as well. And there are many links on that will send you to some of the arts that we've done. But we're doing a number of online things that involve artists from around the world. I forgot to mention that we also organise one of the country's largest festival of street art, the Coloured Earth Festival, which happens every year. which obviously hasn't happened this year, but we invite artists, some of the finest talent from around the world, to one spot in the UK every year to come and perform and show us how great they are, you know, and just to give focus to the visual arts on the street, and have festivals that just have visual art. Can you imagine that? No performers. When we started off, we were very insecure. We thought we had to have performers to rally around a crowd of people and stuff. Now we realise we don't do that. We can stand alone as a visual art in that context of visual arts on the street. So.
And which gives it, I suppose, a different feeling in the event then, completely, because you
Totally.
don't have the noise competing with the pieces to view and to ponder over.
Absolutely. It's a very quiet festival. It's a very quiet festival, amazingly. You can go along and you can just sit there and just enjoy it, you know, and take it all. It's so calming, and it's really good. But I like performance festivals as well, but this is a totally different event. You know?
Well, you wouldn't necessarily be able to have that festival integrated within somewhere like the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, because there's so many noisy buggers like myself around, you know, working crowds up.
We can't compete with. Why would we want to? But you know, we can't compete with you. know.
But it's chalk and cheese, you know, and everyone likes cheese, everyone likes chalk, but you don't necessarily eat them together.
It is. That's right, and it's kind of like adds to the diversity, the rich diversity of street art. Street art's got a lot of culture. It's got a rich diversity. You can't put us all in the same box, because we all come from a different place, and we're all doing it for different reasons. And we get along with each other, and we're all related, but we're of a different, you know.
Well, I wouldn't mind, and maybe in some point we'll talk in the future about this when we're not broadcasting, but finding a way of putting things back together again. I think there's a place for having some touring street things around the country. I think when this ends, some of the things we should do is try and get stars of the street in all different ways, and try and get them to tour around the UK and bring stuff like a road show again.
Oh, great idea. Good idea, yeah, absolutely. I'm up for good ideas.
Yes. So for everyone who's watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for spending time. Phil, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Really genuinely enjoyed this interview. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to your story. Philip Battle, everyone, how great has he been?
Very much.
You're welcome. From me, everyone, I'd like to say goodbye. Sorry, I picked on you when you were drinking there.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching.
Hey, no worries. And last thing for everybody, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like, comment. If you're on Facebook, please join the Whining On with public performers, or follow the Encourage Rogue page. If you can support the project, it'd be incredible. We're currently trying to go through Arts Council funding right now, and any Patreon support through that does help us do that. So if you go to our Patreon, the link is in the description down there. From me, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Goodbye.